everyone is obsessed with the elections. Elizabeth Warren is quietly working in the Senate. Now, you want to know why some progressives who follow the news believe in Elizabeth Warren? It's because of stories like this. You can get obsessed with the elections and who did what and all that drama. But once you peel that back, you have reality and the hard work that goes into actually fighting for a progressive agenda. Now, I have no connection to Elizabeth Warren at all. I've never even met her. But the proof is in the pudding. So let me show you the pudding. The Intercept explains, and God bless him for covering this. They say on Thursday, Warren released two highly provocative letters demanding some explanations. One is to Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz, requesting a review of how federal law enforcement managed to whiff on all 11 substantive criminal referrals submitted by the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission, a panel set up to examine the causes of the 2008 meltdown. The other is to FBI Director James Comey, asking him to release all FBI investigations and deliberations related to those referrals. Now, almost everyone had no idea what happened to the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commissions, that they had actually referred these cases to the Department of Justice saying you should prosecute. Elizabeth Warren and her staff went to the National Archives. They did research and they found out, oh, look at this. It turns out they did ask for prosecutions and the Department of Justice never did a goddamn thing about it. So now she's asking them in these letters, official letters from a senator saying, now you're going to have to explain to me why you didn't do anything about this. Now, normally this is when the government falls back on their standard position of, oh, we don't disclose details of any of these investigations if we choose not to prosecute. Oh, really? So then Elizabeth Warren says this to FBI Director James Comey. You explain these actions by noting your view that American people deserve those details in a case of intense public interest, referring to Hillary Clinton's emails scandal. If Secretary Clinton's email server was of sufficient interest to establish a new FBI standard of transparency, then surely the criminal prosecution of those responsible for the 2008 financial crisis should be subject to the same level of transparency. Booyah! Drop the hammer. Well, you just gave a whole press conference detailing every nook and cranny of why you chose not to prosecute Hillary Clinton. Great, no problem. Love it. Now, tell me why you chose not to prosecute the bankers. Oh, all of a sudden, you clam up and you don't want to talk about that. I wonder why. The FCIC's criminal referrals, which were sent to the Justice Department in October of 2010, have never been made public. Gee, I wonder why. Okay, now, let me tell you what's in them, now that we found out. They detail potential violations of securities laws by 14 different financial institutions, most of America's largest banks: Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Lehman Brothers, Washington Mutual, now part of JP Morgan, and Merrill Lynch, now part of Bank of America, along with foreign banking giants UBS, Credit Suisse, Societe Generale, auditor PricewaterhouseCoopers, credit rating agencies Moody's, insurance company AIG, and mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Almost everybody in the top of the financial industry. And they also specifically named 9 top executives, including the guy on the board of Citigroup, Robert Rubin, a very connected Democrat who used to work in the Clinton administration. You'll find out at the end what happened with Robert Rubin. So why didn't you guys act on this? But now, okay, hold on now. Let's try to figure out what they did. According to the people who were charged with, the Obama administration creates this inquiry commission and says, go ahead, go get them. Find out what they did. And they do. So the FCIC presented the DOJ with evidence that these institutions gave false representations about the loan quality inside mortgage-backed securities, misled credit ratings agencies, overstated assets and earnings in financial disclosures, failed to disclose credit downgrades, subprime exposure, and the financial health of their operations to shareholders, and suffered breakdowns in internal company controls. All of these laws were tied to specific violations of federal law. So all the time that the Obama administration, let alone the Bush administration, have been saying, oh, there's nothing we could do, golly gee. I mean, I guess they made mistakes, but were there any criminal violations? In fact, another part of the Obama administration, whose job was to figure out the criminal violations, figured them out, handed it to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice, well, let's find out what they did with it. None of the 14 financial firms listed in the referrals were criminally indicted or brought to trial, Warren writes. Only 5 of the 14 even paid fines in civil settlements. None of the 9 named individuals were criminally prosecuted, and only one, Crittenden of Citigroup, had to pay so much as a personal fine for a mere $100,000. So in essence, they took all those criminal violations and they threw it in the garbage. They're like we're going to prosecute bankers. They own the place. We're not going to prosecute them. And then they'll turn around and go, no, vote for Democrats. Because if you get a Democratic president, well, they'll be tough on the bankers. My ass, they will. Now, at the same time, Elizabeth Warren is a Democratic senator. So yes, there are some exceptions to the rule. And be mindful of that, understand who they are and how they've earned our trust. But this is Elizabeth Warren calling out the rest of the Democratic Party, the Obama administration, the entire establishment. This is why they can't stand her. She's a thorn on their side. This is why Obama didn't want her to run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was her idea in the first place, because she creates trouble for the establishment. And for the insiders, they were all getting so wonderfully rich, robbing us, and never having any consequences. So at least now we know. Oh, by the way, whatever happened to Robert Rubin? I mean, that's the guy who's at Citigroup, was such an important player in the government before, part of the revolving door. Citigroup was a disaster, all these violations of the law, according to this investigation. In March, Fortune magazine reported that Rubin was, quote, never contacted by the Justice Department in relation to the commission's allegations. They took the rest of the allegations, threw them in the garbage. For Robert Rubin, they didn't even dare to call him. And yet the insiders in the establishment can't figure out why we're all so disgruntled. Why not just keep business as usual? Well, you guys love business as usual. The rest of us hate it. Thank God somebody's doing their job. So if Elizabeth Warren hadn't gone and investigated all this, we would have never found out the details of exactly what laws they broke and how our Department of Justice didn't do a goddamn thing about it. That's the reality.
You know what? This is how I believe, okay? I'm from the old school.
And the old school is also part of the Young Turks Network. Get the whole network by becoming a member today. tytnetwork.com/join.